So who were the Yiddish folk singers? The folklorists who collected, recorded, and examined Yiddish folk songs beginning at the end of the 19th and early 20th century through the 1960s, did so with little concern or interest in the singers themselves. Through an occasional side comment here and there in these earlier folklore collections, we can pick up fragments of important information about the Yiddish folk singer, the history of a singer's performance of a certain song, and the singer's attitude toward the audience. Before the Second World War, only the Soviet ethnomusicologist Moshe Beregovsky asked questions of the singer about his or her life and analyzed the performance. In his introduction to Jewish folk music, published in 1934, Beregovsky makes some basic observations about Yiddish folk singing, such as, quote, "The traditional Yiddish folk song is not only monophonic, but usually unsuitable for collective performance. The more widespread traditional Jewish folk songs were usually performed by a single folk singer, and very often with greater or lesser deviation and variation," end of the quote. Beregovsky on his expeditions tried to recreate what folklorist Kenneth Goldstein would later call an induced natural context. He invited friends to come together and attempted to get them to sing. The result was generally a failure. Each singer sang the song a little differently and felt uncomfortable among other singers. Even today, when one attempts to get older Yiddish singers to perform the same song together, more often than not, arguments will arise on the right words and the order of verses, and the proceedings will be interrupted. The emphasis for folk song collectors in Eastern Europe was to collect now and examine the materials later. Max Weinreich, who directed the YIVO Institute in Vilna, set this tone soon after the establishment of YIVO's Ethnographic Commission in 1925. Because of this emphasis, we find basic scholarly descriptions of Yiddish folk song and folk singers only much later. As Beregovsky noted, traditional Yiddish folk singing was and is primarily a solo, unaccompanied art, though of course there were many exceptions. But even if a group sang, there was the one leader with the strongest voice. The lack of contextual and biographical information on Yiddish folk singers was filled in part by an initiative called the Yiddish Folk Song Project, conceived and directed by Barbara Kirschenblatt-Gimblett from 1972 to 1975, and conducted through the auspices of the YIVO Institute for Jewish Research. Professor Kirschenblatt-Gimblett designed a lengthy questionnaire on the songs in the performer's repertory and asked when it was sung, what did the singer think about the song, when was the first time the singer heard the song, etc. Kirschenblatt-Gimblett extensively recorded Mariam Nierenberg in Toronto and Lifsha Schechter-Widman in New York. A number of other good singers were recorded as well and interviewed in this project, including Miriam Klempner from Warsaw, who can be heard in the movie Image Before My Eyes. I have listened to the Widman recordings, and fortunately, Lifsha Widman also wrote her memoirs in Yiddish, Durchgelebte Welt, A Full Life, in which song and singing plays an important part. Based on these recordings, the memoirs, discussions with other family members, one can now obtain a better picture of the life of the Yiddish folk singer. Thanks to the extensive field recording collections of Ruth Rubin and Ben Stonehill, there are now enough materials in archives, such as YIVO's, to allow us to develop hypotheses about Yiddish singing style. Did singers from Lithuania have a different style than Ukrainian Yiddish singers, or than Polish Yiddish singers? What about women versus men singers? First, we need to clarify the term folk singer, since the word is used for so many different types of performer. In the small town context in Eastern Europe that we are discussing now, a folk singer was not just someone who knew many songs and sang, but one who was acknowledged by the community as a good singer, and as a result, was even taught songs by members of the community with the expectation that he or she, but usually she, would sing these songs back to them or a larger group. In the same way, a good joke teller or storyteller in a community is identified as such and told jokes and stories. No one wants to hear an off-key singer who forgets the words, or a poor joke teller who messes up the punchline, or even a boring storyteller who can't keep us in suspense. A folk singer served an artistic, entertainment, and communal function, and was valued as such. If they were lucky, they sometimes got paid for it, but neither Nierenberg nor Widman ever did. Singing often did help them get on someone's good side. On the ship to America from Germany in 1908, Widman sang German songs for the sailors, and in return was given decent food for the long trip. The singer Mariam Nierenberg from the Polesia region of Poland and Lifsha Widman were already considered future folk singers by their friends and family at a very young age, not even 10 years old. Both had extensive contact with the non-Jewish world, especially Nierenberg, who worked in the fields with the peasants, which was rare for a Jew. For both of the women, singing was central to their lives, and wherever they traveled, they quickly learned songs from that area, even after immigrating. Nierenberg to Canada in 1932, Widman to New York, first in 1908, then again in 1951.